What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Light and Lamp podcast. I am here with Steve,
Hello.
Tim,
Hello.
and Joe this week is joining us.
Hello.
And in this episode, we're just going to go over some NHL news, and we're going to be giving some special recognition to two players, actually, who hit milestones earlier this week, and I want to give special recognition to them. So the first we're going to be talking about, the Boston Bruins had a really, really rough go of things coming through New York. Lost 7-2 to the New York Islanders, 6-1 to the New York, or 6-1 to the New York Rangers. A really, really rough swing through New York. It was 7-2 and 6-2, back-to-back losses to New York teams. And we're going to just talk about them in the context of whether or not we think that the window of competitive viability for this team is starting to close. And I want to kind of put out some questions, to both the people in this episode, and then obviously to the people that are listening, really kind of just challenging our perception of the Boston Bruins as the kind of team they are. So let's just start with like the surface level thing. Yes, obviously the Boston Bruins are still having a fantastic season by most standards. They're 12-5-2. They have a .684 point percentage, which is good for first in their division. 26 points in 19 games, plus 9 goal differential. By all metrics, they're having a good season. But the reason that I started to question my perception of the Boston Bruins in terms of their competitive viability was I'm starting to notice some weaknesses in a roster that we haven't really noticed before. And that being, I don't think that the Boston Bruins are as deep of a team as they used to be. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say they are a one-line hockey club at this point. We saw the injuries to Marchand and Pastrnak, and granted, look, when you lose 2/3 of your top line, that's a rough go for any team. That being said, they scored, 2 goals through like 4 games or whatever it was without them?
In the beginning of the season you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they had like 2 goals through 4 games.
And you know what it really was? Like, to your point, they're not as deep. They needed some young guys here to take a big step forward. Like, they were really counting on Jake DeBrusk to maybe take some of the load of off of not having Pastrnak by scoring more than he did. And I think he has 2 goals through the entire season up to this point.
Has he even scored yet?
I don't actually know, but
I think I heard something the other night watching the Islander game saying that he didn't
see.
score yet.
Jake DeBrusk has 1 goal, 3 assists for 4 points in 14 games.
Yeah, so that's not that's not really getting it done. And like you said, when Pastrnak got healthy and came back into the lineup, it was just like a whole different team. That's when they really started playing well and scoring goals. So it's very evident to me, at least, that there's really no depth anymore to this Boston team, especially on the back end.
Yeah, losing Torrey Krug and Zdeno Chara like that really screwed them over.
I mean,
Not
it
really
gutted their
screwed
team.
them over. I mean,
essentially-
they needed it for young players. I understood why they did it, but there's no way you fill that gap that quickly.
You lose 1/3 of your D core in one off season, one of which being your 9-season captain, Stanley Cup champion by all metrics, one of the best leaders in the NHL, to free agency. It's just they left a lot of holes that they really didn't address at all.
Tuukka Rask is not the goalie that at least everybody thought he was years ago.
Well, I mean, he's also just getting older at this point. He's playing well. It's just he's 33 now.
They've also had a very hectic schedule with Boston Bruins this year.
Yeah, the scheduling doesn't help your so.
They've had a lot of games delayed with just Boston alone. Between
Yeah.
Boston and between Buffalo and New
Philly.
Jersey, and Buffalo, New Jersey, and Philly. Really, the three of them
teams in their division all get postponed.
have all been postponed a lot, and they've had a lot of games postponed when they were playing them. Like the Rangers really didn't have that many games postponed, and they're in the same division because of just when they were playing everyone.
Just worked out that way.
Yeah, they only had maybe I think 4 games postponed so far. So
Um, yeah, and I just, look, I don't want this to come off as us making the argument like, oh, the Bruins are not a good team. I just think we're seeing weaknesses that we've never really seen. Like the Bruins and the Penguins, I think, are two teams that, when you really looked at it, always had young guys and guys coming up from the minors. Like when they got the guys on the roster got hurt, the young guys would step into the team and play flawlessly, seamlessly. There was no transition. Right, the Penguins are famous for that, for Wilkes-Barre Scranton being one of the best developmental minor league teams. And we're seeing that this year with the Bruins. I mean, you can make the argument again, the AHL is not what it was this year because of the COVID and all that, but I think the Bruins are a one-trick pony, and that's not really what you want to be going into a playoff run, Like,
I think also when you take the captain away from the team who's been there for so long, you kind of lose that cohesion. All the things that he did that the coach didn't do, or that the other players didn't do, are now maybe not getting filled the same way. Those shoes aren't exactly getting, per se, filled maybe by Bergeron.
yeah, and I mean, look, the Bruins have had a lot of injuries this season, not to take anything away from them. Even, especially on their defense, when they came through New York and they had that swing through the New York teams, their decor that was already down by 2 or 3 players. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's just so weird because in the past, that's never been an issue for the Boston Bruins. It's never been a problem of this guy's not playing, this guy's not playing. There was never an easy game against them, no matter who was on the ice. As long as they were wearing the spoked B, you knew you were in for a rough time. And it just kind of seems like that's not the case this year,
You've also had, like, it's almost been in non-intersecting years that you had players like Marchand, or last year with like Pasta, pop up, and these players like perform for Boston for like 1 year crazy, and then the next year they kind of just go quiet.
Yeah.
And Rappel is a perfect example of that, where he has like these crazy almost 40-goal seasons, and then I think he had like 40 points like 40 points total a couple of years in a row.
I mean, early in his career, yeah, but I think once he cracked like the 100-point mark, he's been cracking like consistently like a 90-point scorer. So for the last like 4 or 5 years, he was a weird case. He was a late bloomer. Like he really took a long time to get going.
I remember him being like just an okay hockey player to like all of a sudden being this first
Yeah,
liner
it was
that
2016.
everybody...
2016 was that breakout year for him, but like up until then he was still doing well, but you didn't see like that consistency from him.
I think playing with consistent line mates, has definitely helped. And I mean, look, when you play with a guy like, Patrice Bergeron, the best two-way center in the game, it frees you up to do a lot more things that you wouldn't normally otherwise do. You can feel confident taking a chance and being like, oh, I'm going to try to go 1-on-2 and make this move because I know if I don't have it happen, Bergeron's got my back. And, to Joe's point, 2016, Pasta came into the league in 2014-15. 2016-17, Pasta blew up on the spot, hit 70 points in his third year, whereas previously he had 26 and 27 points. So, I mean, the birth of the perfection line, that helps. When you're playing with players of those caliber, it definitely helps. I don't know. I just, like, do you guys agree with me? Do you think that they're just a one-trick pony at this point?
I mean, yeah. So I think they became a one-trick pony too because they managed to gut their farm system trying to trade for players to win now. I mean, like they went out and got Charlie Coyle, and they've been trading for guys like a Ginla, and remember they had Yager.
Oh God.
So it's like, so you know what I'm saying? So like it's so many years of sustained success has finally caught up with them, where I think like they're finally bottoming out. And it doesn't help like how much money they have tied up in guys like David Krejci, who, granted, they signed him when he was still like a 60-point scorer, but now he's 35 or 36 and not the same player, and you're still paying him like what, $6 million or whatever they're paying him.
and this isn't a football podcast, but I think to just allude to something else, like the Patriots are kind of a good example of this in this past year, where like you saw them lose their captain, and like everything else was kind of the same, and like it didn't really make much sense on paper why they weren't good, and then they just kind of sucked.
Yeah, I mean, the Bruins are definitely going to be kind of in the same boat as the Red Wings, kind of in the same boat as the Penguins, that when all is said and done and when this core is wrapped up, when all is said and done and this core is kind of wrapped up, they're in for a long and painful rebuild. This is not going to be a quick 2 to 3 year retool, like we're potentially seeing with the Chicago Blackhawks, where it kind of looks like they have the beginnings of something that might be competitive somewhat soon. This is going to be a long and painful process for these Boston Bruins. Like, it's not going to come easy for them when all is said and done. But
I feel like we always say that though for the Boston, and they always just somehow the next year.
Well, I mean, look, you have some nice pieces. Like, you have David Pastrnak, who's really not that old. He's only like 24 years old.
Yeah.
You have some nice other pieces, like Urho Vakanainen is playing on a team this year. He's a really nice young defenseman for them. But like Steve said, it's shallow. The depth pool in terms of young players on this team is really, really shallow, especially when you start looking in net. They really don't have any prospects that I'm aware of that are worth talking about.
I mean, the other thing is they really struck out drafting 13, 14, 15 and getting two guys who haven't played in the NHL and probably never will, and the other one is Jake DeBrusk, who's dramatically underperforming.
But yeah, when they decided to pass on Matt Barzal, Anthony Beauvillier, Brock Besser, like
Thomas Chabot, like.
Which, by the way, I do. Sorry, not to keep cutting you off. I'm gonna get back. I just want to say I do want to do a podcast at some point on that draft, because that draft is absolutely ridiculous. Like, one of the most stacked drafts I think we've ever seen. But
they all went in like strange places.
Just keep that in mind. I do want to do a podcast on that 2015 draft, because that draft was nuts. Anyway, or not 2015. What year was that draft?
Was it 2014?
I know it was the Matt Barzal draft. He was drafted in 2015. Yeah, so okay. Anyway, what were you saying, Tim?
No, you're good. Keep
going. Yeah, I just like it's thin, Like, I don't really know. Like, Jeremy Lozon is a decent young player for them. Matt Grzelcyk's not that old, but he's already 27. McAvoy's, again, not that old. He's 23, but it's like
you can't call them prospects. I feel like they are already cracked their NHL roster.
Yeah, no, like Charlie McAvoy's not a prospect.
Right.
He's an NHL regular. He's a star.
It's just
they don't have. You know what it is like.
Greg McKeague was their call up. That's the issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Greg McKeague.
In contrast to the Rangers, who like seem to have a pretty deep prospect pool at this point, because like obviously we dumped a ton of cap and players and just
got rid of McKee.
But like the Rangers managed to like go out and acquire a superstar, which they didn't have, and then just surround him with a decent talent pool to kind of see what happens. Whereas the Bruins have the opposite problem. They have like these stars in these positions and they have nobody to surround them with. So it's like like you said, Bergeron is like 35, 36 probably, I think, at this point. And it's like, because he was drafted in 2004?
I'll read out a list here.
Yeah, he's 35. He's 35 exactly.
Bergeron's 35, Krejci's 34, Marchand's 32, and Tuukka Rask is 33.
Yeah, like that doesn't scream sustained success to me in going forward. I mean, in the past, that core was 100% all about sustained success for the Boston Bruins, but if you ask me 3-4 years from now where this team is going to be, it's like, well, I don't. The basement probably.
To me, that screams of leaving, going to a different team. Those ages.
It also screams,
those ages scream. I want to go for one more time.
It screams.
I want one more cup.
Shane Wright. It seems like screams we're going to be competing for the Shane Wright sweepstakes. Like.
So. It seems like we're all more or less in agreement that if this season isn't the death knell, like if the bell isn't tolling for them yet, the guy is working his way up the bell tower to go pull that rope.
Yeah, he might only be on the Pittsburgh Penguins floor right now, but like he's working his way up there.
So I want to pose this question to you. Let's assume, for argument's sake, Boston Bruins do not make it back to another Stanley Cup final, and they do not win another Stanley Cup, which I don't think is a crazy assumption at this point, given how good the Tampa Bay Lightning really are. They're just going to roadblock them every year, I think. you know, the Bruins made the Stanley Cup Finals 3 times in the 2010s. They won once in 2011 in Game 7 against the Vancouver Canucks. Would you consider this run of the core of, we won't really consider Pastrnak because he wasn't there, but the Bergeron, Krejci, Marchand, and Tuukka Rask, Chara, yes, and then Tuukka Rask sort of. I mean, he was the backup in 2011, but would this be a success? Would it be a failure? Would it be a disappointment?
One of the greatest successes in hockey, like in recent hockey, in my opinion.
I guess
To only have one cup out of that whole core, though.
I would
I-
probably
you
consider
only-
it-
But
I
they
mean,
went to 3.
yeah,
And
but
it's
the whole
almost like
thing
the
is
LeBron James effect. How many times
well.
will you go to the finals and not win it to be considered great?
I'll give you an analogy, right? You have the Atlanta Braves of the 1990s, widely considered the best team of that decade, right? I think they won 1 World Series in the entire decade. They should have won like 5 or 6. But everyone talks about the team like it's so great, and I feel like the Boston Bruins are going to be the same way. We're going to look at them as like this era of this team as being like this great era, like defining era for the team, despite its realistically its lack of success. I mean, yeah, you made 3 Stanley Cup Finals, but like one of them, like you won one against Vancouver, which you clawed out with your, by your tooth and nail with that team. Then you ran into the Chicago Blackhawks, who you managed to blow a 2-goal lead to in literally 3 seconds. So like I don't know what happened there. And then you run into the St. Louis Blues, who were like on a miracle run, but
With a rookie goalie.
they had other, like, there were so many factors going for them in a lot of these series that like it's kind of a disappointment they didn't win any of them. And even years where they got to like the conference final, like, and would run into teams like Tampa Bay who would knock them off, or even like the Rangers or Pittsburgh. It's like a lot of times in these matchups, the Bruins probably should have won, and they didn't. I mean, what, in 2011 they win the Stanley Cup. In 2012 they lose in Game 7 overtime to the Washington Capitals, who were the number 7 seed. In Braden Holtby's rookie run, like, that's not good. Like, you can't do that kind of stuff and then be talked about as like this era, defining era in your franchise. I mean, let's be honest, like Bergeron, Chara, Rask, Marchand, like these numbers are going to be hanging from the rafters at the TD Garden long after they retire, because like these are probably some of the greatest players to ever have worn the Boston Bruins jersey, and that's quite an accomplishment considering they're almost 100 years old now. But I mean, I would think it's going to be overhyped more than anything.
The current GM was what, 2015 to now?
When they got rid of Peter Chiarelli.
Or
Not
when did they
Cassidy.
get rid of-
Cassidy's a coach.
No,
when did they get rid of
Sweeney.
Peter Chiarelli? Don Sweeney, yeah.
Let's see.
I think it was 2015.
Don
think so.
How have they
Sweeney.
been doing since 2015? I think
I mean, they made the finals once. Don Sweeney came in executive career 2015 April. Well, he started his tenure in the 2016 season. He became the GM in April of 2015.
Was that the year that they didn't
Alright.
make the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
Was
I
that the
think
year
so.
Mike Milbury predicted the LA Kings Boston Bruins final for them both not to make it to the playoffs?
so. For him to take the team that didn't qualify the year before, not to qualify again, and
Whoops.
then to go from first round to second round to third round to cup or whatever.
Yeah, but you
it
didn't
is.
win the cup is the thing.
Yeah, like
but-
that's a team that's built. No, it's built to win. You're built to win, and you get there and
okay.
you don't win.
I guess
I'm
maybe
saying
It's
for,
the Buffalo
for,
Bills
for this
argument.
guy though, for this
I mean,
guy,
Yeah, for him it's good,
for
but
Sweeney,
like for the
that's a
team,
successful run,
but for
in
like
my opinion.
yeah, but if you're a fan of the franchise, it wasn't a success. You didn't come away with any Stanley Cups.
I think maybe calling it a failure is too harsh. Maybe would you say it more, because look, we won a cup, and there have been franchises where there have been fans that unfortunately have lived and died before ever seeing their team win a cup. You know, like it doesn't.
Toronto.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. You know, the Rangers went what, like 50 something
54
years between their cups. Toronto's been waiting on
54
one since
exactly.
1967.
Yeah, they're
I
about to
think-
break the record.
I
So
think this
winning
was
a cup,
successful run.
winning a cup in any capacity, I think is a great thing, and I don't think I can call it a failure, but I don't think it's a stretch at all to call it a disappointment. You know,
I mean, it's definitely a disappointment not winning a cup.
Like,
I mean, it's like the Rangers of the early 2010s, right?
or like the Rangers of the 70s. I mean, that was kind of not like a failure, but they didn't win.
I mean, yeah, they got roadblocked by the Boston Bruins and the Broad Street Bullies, like, and then the Islanders. It happens, you know. But you're right. Like, you look back on it, and it's like, wow, that was disappointing. We had the gag line, you have the Bulldog line, you have Brad Park, like, and you don't win a Stanley Cup. And it's like, what? And so you look at this Bruins team, and it's like you had Bergeron and Marchand, and in the 2020 and the 2019 one, you have Pasternak, McAvoy. You know, it's just like. I can't
But
say
now
it was all
looking
that
back,
successful.
Now thinking about it, were the Boston Bruins always just a really solid two-line team? Because I feel like anytime they brought in anybody outside of that core roster, they never performed. What did Jerome McGinley or Jaromir Jagr do for that team? Because I don't think Jaromir Jagr scored a single goal for them.
Previous to that, they had a lot of success with guys that.
I mean, Iginla scored 30 goals with them.
Yeah,
he scored 61 points.
Iginla was like a good player for them. So.
Well, see, I don't remember Iginla being that good for them.
Yeah,
I think he was disappointing in the playoffs, but like that regular season, he was very good.
He had 5 goals, 2 assists, 7 points in 12 games for the playoffs. I mean, that's pretty good for the playoffs, you know.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I just remember for some reason no, it was his run with the Penguins that was terrible.
Yeah.
Where they ran into the Bruins and they got shut out twice in 4 games. That's why I remember again.
Yeah, they scored in the playoffs 2 goals over 4 games against the Boston Bruins in the 2012-2013 season.
And then he left there and went to Boston.
I think the Bruins were always a deep team. I mean, I can't really. I mean, when you look at some of their depth players, like you got guys like Gregory Campbell, right? Like. Shot blocking extraordinaire, plays 45 seconds on a broken femur or whatever it was.
Chris Kelly was their fourth line center.
45 seconds.
Like
I thought it was like a minute 30 almost.
Johnny
Something
Boychuk.
stupid.
Chris Kelly was there, like Steve said. You know, you had Boychuk, you had
Seidenberg in his prime.
Earlier in the year, you had Nathan Horton. You know,
Blake Wheeler.
Like
Milan Lucic. 30-goal scorer Milan Lucic.
I just think it's just weird, you know? It's weird sitting here thinking like I mean, wow.
But this is probably also just what we thought in 2014-15. And then they somehow fucking came back.
But the difference is those guys were like, what, 6 years younger at that point?
They were in their mid-20s, yeah. I think
it's not like they were coming up on ending their career at that point, you know?
Like they had a really good third act, but like there are no fourth acts in sports. It's a 3-act play. Unless you're Brett Favre, and then you have a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th act.
Well, yeah, you just keep retiring, and then you unretire every year.
Mm-hmm. A mockery of your league.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. It's just I don't want to say that this is the end, but I think the mountain is only getting bigger and steeper every year that goes by for them, you know?
That 2014-2015 is actually kind of disgusting, this roster.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the year they didn't make the playoffs, or?
Yeah.
They were, because Peter, you know what it was? Like, Peter Chiarelli and, what was the coach? Claude Julien, like
they had a lot of players, like big-name players, who just didn't play more than, like, 10 games, 15 games.
Yeah, they had a lot of injuries.
Was that also the year that Claude Julien just told them to go screw themselves and just left to go join the Montreal Canadiens?
No, they
right
fired
away?
his ass.
Yeah, they fired him.
They fired him?
Yeah, no, they canned him, bro.
You know what? Another factor that kind of makes that run even more, like just a little bit more of a sour taste, is since 2008-2009, when a lot of this core came together, they had 1, 2, 3, 4. They had 2 President's Trophies and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 division championships. You know, it's not like they were the LA Kings who like burned really bright for a couple of years, but were also just kind of mediocre that you could easily see them falling off the cliff. You know, like they were always like 1 or 2 games from not making the playoffs at all. It's like these was a good team every year, or for most of the years, I should say. You know.
And then they had an issue with there was like a disconnect with their coaching, and like that was what happened there. And then they threw Don Sweeney and what's his name, Bruce Cassidy, kind of just like haphazardly into the role. Like, here you go, guys, figure it out. And like, to their credit, like Tim said, they did it. But
well, they also got rid of some decent names throughout the years. Dougie Hamilton, Tyler Seguin, Louis Erickson.
Yeah, but Louis Erickson was like a flash in the pan for them. It was
And
weird.
the other thing was they were successful every year following those trades.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's never made the team
And, like,
worse.
They
because
actually
just,
got better every year up
The
until this
only-
year. Like
the
they were
only-
on an upward climb.
The only ones that kind of misfired was like Rick Nash, but like that's because his head was made of like Play-Doh at the end of his career.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we've seen it, like, to Joe's point, Joe makes a very good point. We've seen them get rid of major pieces before, and the beat just went on. Whereas it seems like this year, if even a little cog falls off the machine, the whole thing falls apart.
yeah,
when
like
the biggest
realist-
cog on the machine falls off and David Pasternak, they have nothing to replace it with anymore.
Yeah, that was really the biggest issue was the fucking the whole wheel fell
engine.
off.
like the whole engine
cog
fell
did.
apart.
Yeah.
You lost your transmission.
I don't know.
Filled it with diesel.
I think, I'm kind of ready to. I'm not saying that their days are over, but I would be very surprised if this team won another cup. I'm not saying that they won't be a miracle run or maybe they make it back to the Stanley Cup, but I think it'd be very difficult for them at this point to win another cup. And I think 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to be looking at a Detroit Red Wings style of just, ouch, ouch. Speaking of, people that the Boston Bruins have lost to in the playoffs, interesting theme here. I want to talk about Jordan Binnington, and I want to talk about his meltdown the other night. So he was playing the Sharks, and back and forth game, like wild, crazy game, goals going in left, right, center. Basically, no defense is being played.
It looked like a game from the 80s.
Yeah, and Jordan Binnington ends up getting pulled, right? I think he got pulled somewhere in the middle of the second period. And on his way out the door, he fakes a punch at one person near the bench, skates
Didn't he
away.
Throw him into the bench.
No, he doesn't fake a punch.
He like throws
He
the guy into
hits
the
him
bench,
with
doesn't
his
he?
stick.
Yeah.
Also, he like hits him with he goes to fake a punch and then instead follows through and just hits him with the stick.
He was like hit him on the side of the head. Yeah.
And then
But I'm pretty
skates
sure he, like, throws
away.
that first guy over.
He skates away when the refs come over. Doesn't answer the bell. Then he walks over to Devin Dubnyk, who's just kind of sitting there, like minding his own damn business. Throws a punch at him, tries to get him into a fight. Again, the referees then skate over, and of course Binnington doesn't answer the bell, and he skates off. And my major problem with what happened is after the fact. It just so happens that the St. Louis Blues come back and win the game, right? Not that difficult to do against the San Jose Sharks when you're the St. Louis frickin' Blues. Just so happens that they come back and win the game. And every hockey media outlet, I saw this on TSN, I saw this on Sportsnet, I saw this on Sports Center. Jordan Binnington, this was calculated. This was a motivation factor. He's a motivator. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, dude, if the
Shelled is
Blues
motivating your team.
if the Blues lose that game, this guy's getting lambasted for acting like a child on his way out off the rink. But because the Blues happened to come back and beat a pretty terrible team, he's getting hailed as this hero of motivation. And am I crazy for thinking that pretending to hit people, actually then hitting people, and then not actually getting into a fight isn't by no way, shape, or form motivation, and it's just a temper tantrum?
I just don't think it's in today's hockey anymore. I think if this was, 25 years ago, or if I think somebody even like Patrick Waugh was behind their bench, he would be all for that.
Yeah,
I
but
just
25
think
years ago, the benches would have cleared. There would have
I was
been an
gonna-
actual fight.
I don't think Patrick Waugh would be a big fan of his goalie not actually fighting, but being a little baby and hitting people.
Not even that. Exactly. He didn't even make a scene. Really, he kind of just ran off in a tussy.
And
Like,
it was directed at everybody and nobody, because nobody on
game
the
went
ice had
on.
done anything to him.
The game went on so meaninglessly. It was crazy. I was watching the game with my dad, and we're sitting there, and then out of nowhere, we don't even see him hit the guy. We don't even see him go for Carlson at center. or hit the guy at the bench, because it's all like behind, like randomly behind the play. Because what happens is he just skates off towards like the benches, like goes like a skate like around the fucking rink, and then just starts hitting people, and then he just skates off. We're like, what the fuck happened? And then they show the replay, and he just throws a hissy fit, but the game started back up maybe 30 seconds later, 45 seconds later, like nothing happened.
Did he get any additional penalties?
He took two.
He took two.
Took two.
What? So, Tim, they were down at that time, right? The Blues.
Yeah,
I think.
they were down 2-0, I believe.
So
2-0 or 2-1.
Not only do you not actually do the thing that you're supposed to do when you want to fire up your team, which is get into a fight.
No, they got shit on worse when their next goalie came out. They didn't do any better. They traded goals back and forth like idiots.
Like, not only did you not fight like you're supposed to, so now you're exhibiting very rat-like behavior, you threw a hissy fit, and you took penalties while your team was already losing because you can't stop the puck. And somehow this is
and did no better.
Somehow this is motivating? Am I losing my mind here? Like if you guys were sitting on the bench and you saw that whole shenanigans happen, and then you have to kill two penalties, like what are you guys going to be thinking at that point?
Oh,
I mean,
no,
like,
my
since
mistake. He
you're
didn't
our
take
goal.
2 penalties. I meant he took 2 minutes.
Oh,
Let's make
well,
that clear.
he took a penalty, right? So they're still down.
Yeah, but still, like that part should just be made clear.
So to your point, Rob, since you're our goalie, if you did shit like this, I don't think any of us would be like, "Wow, what a leader." We'd be like, "What is he doing? Like, why is he doing this?"
I don't
now,
know.
like,
I got
you
one
look like
brain cell. So
Because you look like it makes you also look like an asshole on the bench. Because you're like, "Wow, I have to go stand up for this guy." You know what I mean? Like, he's acting like a child doing this kind of stuff, and then they don't do any better. But now your team has to go there, kill a penalty, and stick up for you if they come after you. And it's like you put them in an awful position all the way around.
I've only seen it once, and I can't remember. Was Devin Dubnyk after Jordan Binnington hit him? Was he about it at all?
He just
Or-
kind of
He
was
wanted
like
it.
he was stood there in shock at
No.
first, and then he was like,
Devin
like-
Dubnyk, from what we understand, said, "Get the fuck off the ice, buddy."
yeah, like he was just standing. He was like, like, what did I do to you? I've been 200 feet away from you.
Like, Dubnyk skates up to him to confront him, and then he pushes him, and then just like, "Nyeh."
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, Devin, like, Jordan Binnington's not gonna fight Devin. He should have, if he really wanted to be a motivator, he should have. But he knows better because Devin Dubnyk is like 6 inches
3
taller than
times
him.
his size.
Yeah, like,
Didn't he also have a little bit of a meltdown in, what was it, the AHL, I think? When they told him that they were, either putting him on loan or...
they were gonna send him to the
Yeah.
ECHL, and he told him no.
Yeah, and he,
Yeah.
like, kind of, like, just, like, freaked out on them and refused to leave.
He had a meltdown on the Blues last year, I think, too. He had something crazy happen where, like, he mouthed off to somebody when he got yanked, and like got into it with a teammate or something. And it's like, is any of this like leadership behavior?
You know,
Like,
as a goalie, I listen, and you guys know this firsthand. There are times when you're just done. You don't want to be in the game. You're just frustrated. You're angry. You're upset at yourself, your teammates, and everyone around you. And there have been goalies that are very fiery, passionate people. Like Tuukka Rask in his younger age was breaking sticks left, right, and center, right? But to me, there's a very big difference between being mad at yourself, going over to the bench when you get yanked, and snapping a stick in half, versus going on a tirade 200 feet around the rink, pretending to get into fights, and screaming at referees. You
you're
know?
trying to fight guys who literally have done nothing to you.
Like, you break a stick, you scream, you yell, and then it's over and done with. But,
you go to
like,
the locker room, you might break some more stuff. But like, listen, nobody cares anymore because you're not
I've
even on
seen
the
Rob
ice.
do that as a player, but it's completely different.
like,
I respect him when he does that.
to go on this tirade of, like, and like, if you really want to motivate your team and not look like a rat, just drop the gloves, dude. If you get your shit rocked, whatever. You know, like,
You're gonna get all the credit in the world, bro. If you go out there and drop the gloves and get your ass kicked by somebody like that's bigger than you just to try to fire your team up, like everybody on the ice is like, wow, that guy, good for him, man. Like, he answered the bell. But like when you do stuff like this, everyone's like, wow, really? Come on, man. Don't be like this. It's like Marshawn. Marshawn will go out there like spear a guy, and then when someone tries to fight him, he's like, "Nah, I'm good."
Kiss the guy, lick him.
It's like, bro, when you're out here acting like this, you have to answer the bell. And when Jordan Binnington's case, when you literally like hit Eric Carlson on the side of the head with your stick, like you have to answer the bell when Dubnyk comes over to give you that shove. Like you have to fight him. I'm sorry.
Wait, Dubnyk hit him first?
Well, Dubnyk skated up to him to say something to him, and then he hit him, and then like Binnington shoved
And then
him.
like the refs like kind of skate in and like he just like skates over to the refs.
But like, what really should have happened as soon as like he saw Dubnyk coming towards him, he should have made it clear to Dubnyk that he wanted to fight him. Like,
Yeah,
the glove should have been off, the mask should have been thrown off. Like,
shake his hand a little bit, just give him that signal.
because like as a goalie, you have to prepare yourself a little differently than a skater who has to just drop his gloves. Like you have to take your helmet off, and it's a whole thing.
And you know, the other thing about it too is like, even if Binnington wanted to fight and nobody else wanted to fight, at least if he would have dropped his gloves, like he wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been as much of a wimpy move as skating around in full goalie gear hitting people. You know.
Yeah, I mean, like we saw it when Ray Emery tried to fight
Braden
Holtby,
Holtby.
who wanted no part of him. But I think that was a little different because he literally came at Holtby from 200 feet to try to fight him. And like Holtby for all 200 feet had made it very clear he didn't want to fight him. You know what I mean? Like this case, it was just like Binnington was coming at him, and Dubnyk was skating up to him, and it's like, buddy should have just dropped him, like
Yes, but
because they
also
both should have
with the
just dropped him and went at it.
With the Holtby incident, didn't Holtby have his glove and blocker on the whole time?
Yeah, he never took any of his stuff off. Emery ripped his mask
Yeah.
off and then just beat him up for
'Cause
like
Holtby's
15
like,
seconds
"Listen,
because the linesman couldn't get involved.
We're up 7-2, buddy. Like, why am I gonna fight you?
He was literally standing in the corner 200 feet away, like skating in a circle, doing nothing.
Which
like,
that's,
just
by the
standing
way-
there.
I completely get that, but then there becomes a point when it's no longer you want to fight, and then it's just like self-defense. Like
Yeah,
if I'm a
but-
goalie and I see another goalie skate over 180 feet,
I
let's
mean,
just say.
Honestly, one of your teammates should see you and should step in is really what should happen.
The
Yes,
linesman
but-
really should have stopped him. He had 100. The linesman had 180 feet to
Was
stop
there
that from
other fights
happening.
going on at that moment?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was
but
a
you
brawl.
can leave the pile to stop the goalies from fighting. Like you can sort out whatever's going on the ice because those guys are all wrapped up and grappling later. Like you can pull them out of that pile whenever you want.
And not for nothing, Ray Emery was known for being a little bit scrappy and
Well,
hot-headed
that's exactly it.
himself.
As soon as you
I-
start
I
seeing
mean-
him take that skate, like you have to know as a linesman, like you have to get over there
That's-
because he's going for it. You
Let's
know?
let's call a spade a spade. Ray Emery was a goon. There's no two ifs, ands, or buts about it. The guy was a goon.
Okay. No, I was just asking for myself. Was unaware.
Like, there's no two ways about what he did was a shitbag move, and I really lost most of my respect for him that day.
Oh yeah, no.
But
You know,
at least I can say, at the end of the day, he fought people instead of pretending
And
to
he
fight
never
people.
stepped into you.
Instead of pretending to fight people. Like,
And like, not for nothing, like Binnington like when Binnington was coming over, like you said, Dubnyk was trying to confront him. So like there was something there. Like he would have been about it had he just dropped the gloves. I think Dubnyk would have understood in his head, like, okay, yeah, this has to happen right now. And he was kind of expecting it. And then when he just got pushed, he was like, what? Like, are you serious? You're not gonna do this?
I think Dubnyk came up to him and was like, "Yo, kid, like, you want to go?" And you think Binnington just looked at him, said no, proceeded to shove him and run off to the locker room?
I mean, it could have been anything. But like, just the situation he's in was a little different than the situation with like Braden Holtby. Like, it's
Oh,
like
no,
I said,
I'm
like you're
not
not like it's
comparing
not like
the
he's
two at
going
all.
after a
I'm
guy who's not
very
like
much
ready
aware of
for
it.
it.
The only
You
thing
know?
I have to say about Braden Holtby is there becomes a point
When
When-
you have to defend yourself, no, I know.
you like he's a threat, and he got too. For me, that's what he's too close in my bubble. Whatever position you are, it's like if you're a coach, and
I mean, if you think like you have to realize though, like he might like he has to realize he could get actually hurt fighting him.
you can get actually hurt just standing there getting his shit rocked.
I think you have
Yeah.
less of a chance if you, especially because
Like,
he still had his equipment on, if you just straight up turtle like he tried to do. What really screwed him over was that the linesman came over and tried to break it up, and all that led to was Ray Emery punching Braden Holtby in the back of the head.
Well, because he just like wrapped up Braden Holtby and held him in place for him. He put him like
Yeah.
a full Nelson for
How-
him. He's like, here you
The
go. kid."
linesman kind of screwed Holtby on
Well, yeah,
that one.
that's why you're supposed to grab someone by their waist and not by their fucking arms.
Or if you're gonna break up a fight, you're supposed to grab the guy who's swinging and not
Grab
the
the
guy who's
aggressor.
turtled on the ice.
How
Like,
much force
not a
can
threat.
the refs use? That leaves a good question now. I never thought of that. How
How much
force
force should they
can the
use?
refs use?
Enough
mean,
to break up a fight.
Yeah,
If
but
They're
the
not
ref
supposed
is
to hurt
always
you.
supposed to grab them by the waist, so because you're supposed to lead the person to defend themselves.
the other,
Yeah,
I
you're
mean,
just trying to like pull them off.
yeah, I mean the linesman screwed that up big time, but ultimately, so we're all in agreement here that whoever is calling that a motivation factor has either A, never played hockey, or B, doesn't know what they're talking about.
Doesn't understand context. Yeah.
And also C, if the St. Louis Blues lose this game, we're not even having this conversation.
We'd probably still be having this conversation, but it wouldn't be through this like lens. We'd just be talking about how much of a douche Jordan Binnington was acting like.
Like, if they lose that game, nobody's publishing an article saying that Jordan Binnington is a motivator.
No, they'd probably be saying exactly what we're saying right now.
And quite honestly, if they were playing a better team, they would have lost that game. No offense to the San Jose Sharks, you're not good. So
I wouldn't doubt it if management still leaned into him about it.
Oh,
They should.
probably.
If I was the coach, I probably would have fined him for it. Honestly, if the league wasn't going to, I'm like, all right, bro, like you made us all look bad here. You have to pay up because when it comes down to it, the NHL is like a job and it's professional and like you are expected to behave a certain way on the rink, and like going around slapping guys with your stick and trying to pretend to fight them is not. It's obviously not in the rules, but it's also like clearly removed from like the gray area.
That's slashing. That's in the rules.
Well,
Can't
yeah,
do that.
it's slashing, it's high sticking, it's a lot of things, but like
You know what I would have done?
even within the code of hockey
No, but
that
you're
like,
right,
exists
Steve.
outside the rules, like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if he just skated up and started swinging on guys, that exists in the code. Like it's like, oh, he's a dickhead, he's jumping guys, but like at least he's getting into it. Like they're gonna fight.
Well,
He's
that
like-
reminds me of what you brought up, and it's a very
But
good
he's getting
point.
in the mix.
Yeah.
There becomes a point when somebody from above in the organization has to come down with, and the last time I remember this happening, which was a big one, not a big one, but just something that sticks out to me was, who was it? Radulov, and I think it was another Russian player
Oh,
on
when
Nashville.
they scratched
Kostitsyn.
them. Sergei
Radulov and
Kostitsyn.
Kostitsyn.
They stayed up to like 4 a.m. the day before their playoff game, and management was like, you know what? No, you're not playing tomorrow.
Or you could just do what the Rangers coach did to that one kid and have him take like a 10-minute shift.
That was no kid. That was God. Why can't it was Kovalev, Alexei Kovalev. I
Wait,
mean,
they made
Scotty-
him do a 10-minute shift?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. It happened to Scotty Bowman did it to Sergei Fedorov too. Russian players were used to taking longer shifts because of the way they played in Europe, and like they would just stay on the ice forever, and eventually Scotty Bowman got fed up with it, and so did Mike Keenan, and he was like, they went to come over for a change, and he was like, no, go back. And like he just let him every time he came for a change for like 9 minutes, he was like, no, go. No, you're playing. You wanted to stay out there so long, yeah, go. Keep playing. They just left him out there.
If I was the coach, honestly, if I was what's his face, who's the coach in St. Louis now? He's a former player.
Oh, it's not Rick Tocchet. It's Craig Berube.
Yeah, you know what I would do? I would have Braden Holtby buy dinner for every fourth liner on that team that had to take 10 extra hits that game because the Sharks were pissed off. Be like, listen, like their shoulders injuries on you now. Like you're buying them dinner tonight. But
I would have just benched him in favor of Ville Husso. But like, yeah, I know we got shelled worse, but like, listen, like he's not out there. At least he's taking it like a man. Like he's out there getting shelled and just like screaming and yelling at people and himself. Like he's not causing a scene. He's not making us look bad. He's not, trying to pretend to fight guys. He's just getting there and getting beat up, and he's taking it.
So Jordan Binnington, decidedly
Clown.
not a motivator. And again, speaking of two more people that the Bruins have very much experience losing to, we want to congratulate Sidney Crosby on his 1,000th NHL game. He played that against the New York Islanders the other day. It was quite actually funny. Everyone on the Penguins warmed up and did the morning skate and all that, or not the morning skate, the pregame skate, just like Crosby did. Like they all mimicked his routine. That was quite funny, and all of his stretches and stuff. There's like 40 players just stretching the same exact way.
All tying their, what was it, right or left skate? I forget
Yeah.
which one it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
left skate
Looked like,
first, I think.
looked like a booty streak. How they do.
But we did talk about Crosby a lot last week and how much he means to the Penguins, which is ostensibly how much he does mean to the game of hockey. So we will keep it brief when we talk about Sidney Crosby. But, obviously, as an Islanders fan, saw way too much of the guy. Everyone said their fair share of chirps and nitpicks at him. Still, he does have his moments where the whole crybaby Sidney comes back. But at the end of the day, one of the best players to ever lace up a pair of skates, one of the hardest working guys to ever lace up a pair of skates. And as much as I hate him for how much damage he's done to my Islanders over the years, still have to give it up to, Sid, the not so much kid anymore, number 87, Sidney Crosby. So I guess if you have the floor, if you just want to give your thoughts on what Crosby means to you, growing up watching him play, into the game of hockey at large, I'll give you the floor.
I hated him so much growing up, but it's just like because he played at the Rangers so much. But I mean,
okay, yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, looking back on it now, like, I can't deny, like, just the out and out talent and like fighting back from those concussions, which very easily could have ended his career, and coming back and being a better hockey player afterwards. I mean, we all thought the Penguins team was done, and then they go out and win back-to-back Stanley Cups largely through the efforts of Sidney Crosby being like one of the greatest players on earth.
Yeah, just about.
And that's really all I want to say about him.
As a kid, I absolutely hated him. Princess Crosby fucking riddled my Rangers. And I absolutely hated his guts. And then, probably after he came back from like the second head injury he had, I had a lot of respect for him, and like I just looked at him differently. And he's been one of my favorite players since.
You were saying something, Joe?
Yeah, because I actually saw an interesting stat. I forget I think it was what year on. But I did not know this. I don't know if it was modern, post-90s, in the 2000s. But I think it might have been the NHL that posted it. Not sure. But it said something, and I was unaware of this. And I think it was the 08-09 season.
Can you say it?
What?
That Crosby and Malkin had 36, I believe it was, and Crosby had 31 playoff games. Which is just outstanding because, going back to even what Rob said, everybody thought that they were done, that they were going to be the next team that was going to sell everybody and, go for draft picks. They still won 2 Stanley Cups and, still moving forward, teams might not even want to play them in the playoffs even as recent just because who knows with Sidney Crosby and together with Evgeny Malkin what they could still do, even at this age.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying the impact that Crosby has had on the sport. I mean, an icon, one of the guys who's really helped to grow the game. Just A, by being as good as a hockey player as he is, and B, by being, as much as we all lambasted his antics on the ice sometimes, off the ice being a consummate professional for most of his career, being somebody that was very easy for the NHL to market because of how, clean and how hard he worked and all those sorts of things. So
how willing he was to give back to his community. I mean, he was always at the charity events. He always was volunteering his time. I mean, like, realistically, Sidney Crosby was the perfect role model to have for the NHL. Like, he couldn't have come any better gift wrapped, like you said. You know what I mean? Like, Ovechkin had some rough edges. He had some, like, things about him that were, like, not as easy to market, whereas Crosby's just like, here you go.
It also helps that Crosby is Canadian. There's that factor too.
Well, that's true, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it would be very easy for them to be like, here you go. And exactly because he is Canadian, like, the perfect hockey player. Here you go. Clean-cut Canadian boy from a small town.
Just want to extend our congratulations to Sidney Crosby for making it to his 1,000th game through all of his injuries and hardships throughout his career. And for the final time in his podcast, I'll repeat myself. Another guy that the Bruins are very experienced in losing to. Patrick Kane scored his 400th goal the other night in the regular season. And we want to congratulate him. He's the 100th NHL player to do so. And it really got me thinking about, Patrick Kane and where he ranks among the pantheon of American hockey players. So I'm just going to rattle off some stats at you guys real quick. Patrick Kane, his career stats, regular season games played, 995. 400 goals, 656 assists for 1,056 points, which is 1.06 points per game played. He's 10th amongst American players in goals, 7th in assists, 7th in points, and 3rd in points per game played. His playoff numbers: 19th. He has 136 games played, 52 goals, 5 overtime winners, 80 assists, 132 points for 0.971 points per game played. His ranks 19th in games played, 6th in goals, 1st in overtime winners, 5th in assists, 4th in points, 5th in points per games played, 5-time 30 goal scorer, 2-time 40 goal scorer, 9-time 70 plus point producer. 5 times those were 80 points or better. 2 times it was 100 points or better. 3 times in the playoffs he was a point per game or better. 3-time Stanley Cup champion. He has a Conn Smythe, a Hart, a Lindsay, an Art Ross, and a Calder to his name. I mean, what more can you say about Patrick Kane other than
Showtime, bro?
Like, it is Showtime. Like, so we will get into the argument. Let's do the argument first, and then we'll end with our fondest memories of Patrick Kane. Do you guys consider him the best American-born player ever among the pantheon of other players? Brett Hull's kind of in a weird gray area because he played for the Team USA, but he's technically born in Canada, so he does count, I think, for most discussions. And then obviously you have like Mike Modano.
Yeah.
Some people sometimes bring up Chris Chelios because of the longevity of his career.
Up there sometimes.
But among the pantheon of American hockey players, where does Patrick Kane rank for you guys?
I mean, Rob, you came to like the Patrick Kane fan club to ask this
you got
question.
number 1, baby.
Yeah, bro, like he's the best. He's the greatest
He's the
American-born
greatest.
player of
There's
all time.
No one better.
I mean, how can you argue with 3-time Stanley Cup champion, 5 overtime winners? I mean, he's got the game-winning goal in Game 6 of the 2010 Stanley Cup Final.
The pussy destroyer.
Patrick Kane is just like a man.
I think what really stands out to me about his stats is that he's 53rd in regular season games played and top 10 in everything else.
Yeah,
He's 19th in playoff games played and top 6 in everything else. So he hasn't had as nearly as many games as some of his other compatriots in the American counterpart, and he's absolutely dominating these stats. Like,
I mean, he, by and large, he's just the best American-born player of all. I don't know how else to put it. Like, it's just he's the best.
There's no question about it. Just the greatest one of them.
Like, the only other argument you can make, in my opinion, is Mike Modano, and that's just because of how consistent he was. But like, bro, Patrick Kane, 3-time Stanley Cup champion. Bro, he's only getting better. He's only getting better as he gets older.
he's only, 32?
And he's only missing more pieces.
Like, he's 30. Yeah, you said he's 32 now, and he's playing with like ham scraps, and like he's still gonna score almost 100 points. Like, it's insane.
So what about
It
Kane?
doesn't matter.
What about
Position
Kane
matter.
makes you think that he's the best American? Because I agree with you, obviously, but like, what about Kane solidifies that argument in your mind? Is there like a certain thing that he does, a certain way that he plays?
Outside of like his out and out ability just to dominate a hockey game, when like Patrick Kane wants to take a game over, there's nothing you can do to stop him. It's just like how absolutely clutch he was in every situation. Whenever you needed a goal or you needed somebody to come up with something, you could be like, "Yo, Patty, get over the boards," and he'd go out there and he'd do it. I mean, the 5 overtime winners, like, that's first all time. You can't argue with stuff like that. You know, like, you can't say, "Oh, he didn't show up when they needed him to. We could never win the big one." It's like, I would like to argue the opposite. He's won games in overtime on his own. He's got 3 Stanley Cups to his name. He single-handedly almost carried a terrible Blackhawks team into the playoffs 2 years ago, and then successfully carried them into the playoffs last year when they had no business being there. The guy's just amazing.
He's just better, coach.
Do you think he's the most clutch player of all time?
It's either him or Sid.
Yeah.
It's got to be one of the two. I mean, Sid's got the golden goal to his name, right? Like, you can't. It's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, that's the only thing that.
And he's he's a 3-time Stanley Cup champion as well.
Yep. They have the one in 2009, and then obviously
And then,
2016 and 2017.
4-time Stanley Cup finalist. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really think that there's ever been a player quite with the presence of Patrick Kane among the pantheon of American-born players. I mean, he does it all. I mean, in the offensive zone, he can pass, and it's really crazy because we think of him as this elite goal scorer. He's never hit 50, but yet he's hit 100 points twice, which tells you that he's dishing the puck basically as well as he can score. And if you know how well he can score, that's insanity. I
And the
mean,
best part is like even if you needed something crazy like shootout goals, right, which becomes essentially a skills competition, he could do that too. And he's one of the best at
oh
it.
my,
He would make goalies look
like
silly.
the hands on the guy, like
The
It's
stuff
funny.
he
There's a video out that of NHL players, and they say, excuse me,
bless you.
if they could have one trait of another player, they would take Patrick Kane's hands. Is what most of them say.
I mean, do you blame them? Like I think he's got the best hands in the league.
I
Like he's
think
better
that's
than
what, I think
McDavid.
Sid says his hands though. I think he's like, I'll take Patrick Kane's hands.
I mean,
So,
They're
there's
just so
nothing-
fast. They're just so fast.
saying it, like I think we kind of have our.
And there's nothing else he can't do to either. Like, do you remember the spinorama backhand top shelf? Like,
He does
I mean,
that
come
all the
on.
time. Which
Didn't he
how
just
do you
that a couple weeks ago?
yeah, and he did it
like?
he's
How
done
do
it a
you do
bunch.
that with your back turned to the play, a full 360 spinning backhand, and he picks the spot on it? How do you do that?
Better coach.
just he's got eyes in the back of his head. Like I really don't know.
Superman. He has this
I'm
like.
even
He's
the
Superman.
winner.
He's literally Superman on the ice.
The winner in 2010. I mean, he picks the 5-hole skating away from the net. Like, who does that?
Which, by the way, I mean, let's be real here, okay? Patrick Kane at that time is 22 years old, playing in the Stanley Cup Finals. There are basically not zero. There's basically like 2 other 22-year-olds I can think of that would have the guts to take a shot like that, and it's probably Ovechkin and Crosby.
Or to
No,
make the
like-
move, even to make the move he makes on the boards to take the shot. Like he makes like that head fake move and like breaks that guy's ankles and then just goes down the boards and scores. Like most guys would have just dished the puck off, thrown it down the boards, made the safe play in overtime. Patty's like, nah, I'm gonna stare this guy down and do it.
Just look at him this season. I think he's fourth in points on the season.
Yeah, on a pretty anemic. He's playing with DeBrincat, who's playing really
DeBrincat.
well actually.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah, but Kirby Doc broke his
Nylander,
wrist, so he's not even. He doesn't have
Strong.
Kirby Doc. Well, okay.
I mean, he's got
Or
Dylan Strome, but
Taves.
what is his
You have
team?
Alex Nylander. Let's not pretend that he's lighting anything on fire here, but
Not
Um,
awful.
he's not like surrounded with talent really, and he's still out there just casually winning games,
I mean,
putting
in
up
that-
5 points.
in
like,
that run, he has 10 goals, 18 points, 18 assists, 28 points in 22 games as a 22-year-old.
yeah, he was clutch even back then. Like
So, I guess to kind of like summarize the factors that are, obviously the stats speak for themselves, right? He's top 10 in almost every stat. He's top 10 in the most important stats outside of games played, which tells you if he played more games,
he'd probably be higher.
he's only 32, and he's got all these trophies to his name. So I think the other factors that we're quantifying is just raw talent, his vision, and his clutch factor, right? And the ability to dominate a game are like the 4 things that set Patrick Kane apart, right?
I would say so.
So let's wrap up the podcast with some fond memories. We'll go down the list. We'll each give one, then we'll kind of just talk it out a little bit. But so I'll start just in the order that I see your guys' names. And Steve, what's your favorite Patrick Kane memory?
I think so. My favorite memory is probably when him and Austin Matthews were exchanging those sellies after the goals. Like Austin Matthews did that whole thing like all with his hand. And then, 35 seconds later, Patrick Kane jumps over the board, scores a goal, and is mocking him at center ice. That's just, it sums up what I love about Patrick Kane is that, he knows he's better. He just knows. There's, a swagger that comes with him,
It's also cool to see him kind of going back and forth with, the next American generational talent, too,
Yeah, I mean, he
That's a
very
pretty
obviously
cool moment.
knows. He knows, Austin Matthews is one day going to, at some point he's going to hang the skates up and Matthews is going to be, the guy for Team USA. But
Matthews might be the American who could pass his records. Honestly,
he's the only one I think might be talented enough to challenge him, yeah.
Tim, what's your
Jack.
favorite Patrick Kane memory?
my favorite Patrick Kane memory. Oh my god.
It's hard to pick, right?
It's probably from that. Do you remember that quadruple overtime we watched where we made the patriarchy chat?
Oh my god, yeah, when what's his name
It's-
headed the puck into the net.
It's probably that game, just as a whole.
He's just he like
He's
took the
just
game.
better,
Didn't he
coach.
win the? Didn't he score the winner?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
I remember holding in my piss forever.
bro, because like that game just wouldn't end. Oh my god, I remember that game.
I probably got fucking died from that,
Like a UTI from holding it for so long.
bro. Like,
Joe, what's your favorite Patrick Kane memory?
What is it? The Heartbreaker? Only because
Yeah,
I was
bro.
watching that live, and
Oh,
I
you
forget
stole
who
my
they were playing.
moment, jackass. So you stole my
Um,
moment, so I'll explain what that was, which was, if it's the one that I'm thinking about, we're talking 2013 Western Conference Finals, Game 5 against the LA Kings.
Yep.
Patrick Kane, by the way, no big deal, to seal the game in double overtime, scores his hat trick goal, by the way. And the thing that really amazes me about that goal is the 2-on-1. It's not a conventional 2-on-1. Like, it's not a tap in at the back door where, like, I could have scored it. Jonathan Toews dishes it over to him, and Patrick Kane unleashes a one-timer, not from in the circles, not from the slot, from the top of the circles. And he rips it on 2013 Jonathan Quick to win the game, goes on his knees, heartbreaker Selly, double overtime hat trick winner. Take us through what you were feeling at that time, Joe, to go back
It was
to you.
just crazy because I remember being in, 10th grade watching it. I think it was something stupid, like 1, 2 in the morning.
Yeah, it was dumb
'Cause
late.
mind you, the game probably started 7 o'clock LA time, 7:30 or whatever, which is like 10:30 New York, or 6:30, whatever. And now it's in double overtime. I think if I'm not mistaken, I might have been like a Sunday night. I feel like I had school the next morning, and I remember just seeing him score, like wanting to jump up and start screaming, but like not being able to because I was supposed to be asleep. And it was just crazy because just like even now you still, what is it, 8 years later, and you still play the NHL video game, and that Selly is still a thing that's in the game.
Bro, we
still
still watch
something
that
people-
highlight.
So, yeah.
We would literally will still sit down and watch Patrick Kane score that goal over and over again, and I'm still just as excited now by it as I was 8 years ago.
Yeah, so
Like-
June 8th, 2013, it was actually a Saturday, so luckily for us, we didn't have school the next day, thank
Okay.
God.
So
Yeah, no, I get you. Like, it's just, there's a special feeling. I remember watching that game double overtime, like, my heart was racing, even though I wasn't really particularly a fan of either of these teams. Although I will say I have a soft spot in my heart for the Chicago Blackhawks, only if nothing else because we watch them go deep in so many playoffs. So you just watch so much of them, you can't help but start to root for guys like Patrick Kane. It's just like there's a special moment when you see that 2-on-1 and you see it's Kane and Toews and you just know the game is over. If Patrick or Jonathan Toews gets that pass over to Showtime, that's game over. Like you just
It's
have
like the
that
last
feeling.
guy you want the puck going to in overtime. Like you look over and it's like, oh god, it couldn't have been like Duncan Keith.
Or like Andrew
like-
Shaw, like
It's like, oh my god, it's like staring down the barrel of a loaded gun. You're like, oh my god, really?
it's like
Well, I
really,
think
it's
Patrick
like
Kane-
19 and 88 have to come down on a 2-on-1. Are you serious?
In overtime, no less.
this brings up just a good point about the Chicago Blackhawks. Even if it was Duncan Keith or probably 3-4 other guys on that team at that moment, I would have been just as terrified if I was Jonathan Quick. And I've seen plays where Seabrook comes over the blue line in overtime. I think they're playing Detroit and just blows it by people. And that just goes to show you that they were just a team built to last. They were just an amazing team. In and out.
I just
they were
feel
one of the
like
last teams.
They're
Sorry.
just no, you're good. What were you gonna say? I kind of cut you off.
I was
there.
gonna say this. I feel like they're one of the last teams to win the Stanley Cup with an okay goalie. Everybody else, I feel like every other year to win the Stanley Cup has had great goaltending.
Pittsburgh.
What, Matt Murray?
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Murray really did kind of steal the show from.
Like,
Fleury.
yeah, but
He played well in the playoffs, but
But who did Chicago have? Nieme?
Corey
well, they Niemi the
Crawford.
first time and Corey Crawford
In
twice.
20.
Yeah, I'm talking about
13
the
and
Nieme
15.
time. I'm not talking about Corey Crawford. I understand where your argument is. Matt Murray, Corey Crawford, I think is better than Matt Murray. That I'll give you. But I'm talking about Nieme. Like the first time they won that Stanley Cup, they did not really have even
They didn't really have a. They didn't have, neither team had good goaltending
Yeah, it
that
was
Stanley Cup final.
Niemi versus Michael Leighton. Like, woo. Whoa, guys. Let's be careful here, but don't want to have too many Vezina goalies on the ice at the same time. I don't know. Like, to me, even when I'm just watching a regular season game, when Patrick Kane touches the puck, you get a little jittery. You feel like you might see something, and you just never know with the guy. Like, he can pick corners like nobody's business. He scored more goals from the goal line than some players have scored in their whole career. I mean, the spinning backhands, the spinning passes, the hands. It's just
Imagine winning the Stanley Cup and no one on the ice knowing but you.
I was just gonna
knew.
I was just gonna say that to me epitomizes just how good he was, just how young he was. That he makes that move, he takes that shot, and he's the only one that knows that puck goes in. Out of the 20,000 fans or whatever was, not that many, but like the 16,000 fans in the building, the 10 players or the 12 players on the ice, the 2 linesmen, the 2 referees, everyone on the bench, Patrick Kane is the only one that knows that he did that.
His other team even questioned it at first.
The huge fucking balls you must have to just start celebrating like that, because everyone else is still playing the game. No one has stopped. He doesn't even look around once. He literally just starts
he fires it in the net and then rounds the net with no gloves or helmet on.
Skating, he just starts run skating around, throwing his shit in the air.
Bro, it's even when he jumps on Niemi catches him, bro, are you sure? I'm not so sure about this.
At that moment, I think somebody on the bench, or it might have been Niemi, comes over to him and is like, "Are you sure that went in?"
And Patrick Kane, I guarantee you, looked him in the face and was like, "Yeah, it went in. Come on, it's me we're talking about." And it's like, "You're not okay, yeah."
Just to be as iconic as having not one but 2 Sellys named after you, the Heartbreaker and the Showtime Selly.
I mean, he's literally called Showtime, man. To get a nickname like Showtime and live up to it.
Special player, and I just think, between him and Crosby, Ovechkin, Matthews, and actually specifically I want to talk about, Patrick Kane, Crosby, and Ovechkin, just to kind of being able to grow up and see these guys in their prime, I think is just an absolute treat. And we're very fortunate as hockey fans to have really grown up with that era,
We were really lucky.
And that's not to mention, obviously, the numerous other superstars that we got to watch. Like, we got to see the end of Nick Lidstrom's career growing up. We got to watch Henrik Lundqvist,
Jaromir Jagr, the end of Jagr's career.
So, we're just very fortunate, and we just want to extend our congratulations to Patrick Kane, and we want to preemptively extend our congratulations for his 1,000th game, which will come sooner rather than later since he's at 995. And yeah, when his career is all said and done, I think you're making a very, very strong argument for Patrick Kane being the greatest American-born player of all time. Do any of you guys want to say anything final before we wrap up the podcast on just anything in general?
This leaves me with a good question. Last thing, where would you rate him in right wings, regardless of country?
He's in my top 5 greatest players of all time, period.
Okay, that simplifies it for me.
If I put it to you that way, it's Gretzky, Lemieux, probably Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, and Sidney Crosby, Kane. Kane's in the top 10 somewhere. He's one of the greatest of all time. There's just
it's
no
hard
argument.
to do a top 5 all time for all positions because there's 5 positions.
To answer your question, he's probably number 2 on the right wings, just because Mike Bossy might be number 1.
Yeah,
and the funny part is, he played even better at left wing.
That's even crazier, right?
Yeah, so I want to thank you guys for watching. As far as what we're going to do next week, who knows? It's just going to come down to what happens in the NHL, what goes on, any news that comes out. Lots of rumors flying around about certain players, so we'll keep an eye on that. And probably the week after that, most teams will be towards their 28th game. So in 2 weeks, we'll be doing our halfway mark podcast when most of the league has kind of caught up to that halfway point. Some teams are going to get there next week, like the Canucks are already at 26 and whatnot. But when most of the league has caught up to 28 games, we'll be doing our halfway episode. So 2 weeks from now, keep an eye out for that. Next week, who knows? Let's see what happens. Maybe Jack Eichel becomes a Ottawa Senator.
Anaheim Duck.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, we'll see.
Something absolutely bananas.
Toronto Maple Leaf.
Maybe
He's a Florida Panther.
maybe Jack Eichel gets so frustrated he buys the Buffalo Sabres and moves them to Quebec. I don't know. We'll see.
He joins the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah. But I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys again next time.